going back a little bit, your orthopedic friend says, hey, consider ophthalmology, kind of lines up with your interests. So you apply to ophthalmology, you get in, you went to Michigan for residency, is that right?
I went to Baylor College
you went
of
to
Medicine.
Baylor, sorry. You went to Michigan for undergrad and medical school.
Yes.
What was that like down there in Texas?
Baylor was brutal. I mean, because I went in there, I had not really prepared anything ahead of time. And Baylor in general tends to be a very, very tough residency. So, I mean, there's a common thought process. I think things have changed now, but where you see one, do one, teach one. Well, at Baylor, it was very much where you're do one, do one, do one, do one. Then finally you get to see one, how it's done. And then you may start teaching. I mean, we would basically, when we were operating, many times the first years, we would not have attendings with us. We'd get lucky if we'd have a third year. I remember my first day on call, I literally had a dark room, and I basically, while I was watching a patient, I kind of had the Will's Eye manual open on the side with my pen light, just trying to read through, trying to find what the hell is going on here. How do we handle stuff like that? So I felt totally overwhelmed at that time. At the time, it was painful, but coming out of it, the beauty of that residency is that I felt like I could handle anything. There's nothing that would come to, like a lot of times our technician would call up and say, oh my God, I got this coming. I mean, at this point in time, there's nothing that comes to the door that I'm going to be worried about how to handle. Because I think your residency and your fellowship, in my opinion, is where you want to work as hard as possible. You want to see as much as possible. You want to see all the crazy stuff out there so that when you're out in practice, that's where you can feel like, hey, I can handle anything I want to inside there.
I agree on so many levels with a lot of what you just said. It was interesting, the transition from the transitional year to ophthalmology, because when you're on call or on night shift in internal medicine, and let's say you're the intern, well, you have your juniors, you have your seniors, there's attendings on call, there's nocturnists working. So you have this whole team around you. And then you transition to ophthalmology residency. And now instead of having maybe 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 co-residents, you're down to an average of 3 or 4. And when you're on call, it's just you on call. The senior resident isn't there all the time. They're there. Hopefully, if you have a good senior resident, they're there when you need them. But all of a sudden, it's you. And like, I'm sure it was similar for you in Baylor, but in Cincinnati, we took care of a massive catchment area. And so anything that was happening within 2 or 3 hours was coming to the University of Cincinnati. It's a level 1 trauma center. We saw a ton of open globes, ton of trauma. Ophthalmology in general has such a steep learning curve right off the bat. You're trying to learn the language. You're trying to learn how to use the instruments, how to use a slit lamp, how to use a 20 diopter lens to even look at the retina on call. And so those first call shifts, I think, can be really, really tough, especially if you don't have an integrated intern year or you haven't had some sort of away rotation or experience if you didn't have an ophthalmology
department. Yeah, it's brand new. It's like you have no clue what's going on.
Right. And so that's what I tell people when they come to me and ask, hey, what should I look for in a residency? I oftentimes will say something that I think can be really beneficial is having resident-run clinics. There's 2 extremes to that. There's resident-run clinics kind of where you don't have an attending and no supervision and you're just kind of left to fend for yourself. But then there are those resident-run clinics where you are the physician, you are the ophthalmologist, you are taking care of the patient, you do everything, and then you go present to your attending. And then the attending comes in and then will either confirm or say, hey, take another look here. This is what this is. And you get some teaching out of it. And I think that is so important because, like you said, when you graduate then, you have that sense of autonomy. Hey, I've been through this on my own before. I know what this is like. While you still have that teaching. And so I think that can be really, really beneficial for people coming up.